Call the St. Paul City Council to order. Roll call.
Tolbert. Here. Yang. Here. Ballinger.
Here.
Jalali.
Here.
Naker.
Here.
Prince.
Here.
Council President Bren Moen. 6 present, 1 absent, being Council President Bren Moen, and she's excused.
Please stand if you're able and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our City Council meeting today. I know that many of you are here for public hearings, and when we get closer to that point, I'll give a few more instructions for how we'll do our public hearings today, but in the meantime, welcome and thanks for being part of the process. I do want to shout out to any of our folks who are under 18 in the audience that if you're still here towards the end of our meeting, we're probably going to have you come up, stand in front of the 5 live TV cameras and our millions of viewers at home and tell us your name, where you go to school, and your favorite thing to do in St. Paul. So that is an inducement to stick around, not to leave, just to be clear. And with that, we will start with our consent agenda.
Consent agenda items 1 through 16 are before you for your consideration.
Is there anything to be taken separately? Seeing none, Ms. Jalali moves the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted. Item 17 is Resolution 22-1620, declaring October Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Ms. Prince.
Yes, I'll step up to the mic. We are so incredibly lucky in St. Paul to have the partnership across city, county, and community that makes up the St. Paul Domestic Abuse Partnership. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. Declaring October Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas the City Council of St. Paul, Minnesota recognizes that living free from domestic violence is a fundamental human right. And whereas domestic violence affects women, children, and men of all races, sexual orientations, identities, spiritual beliefs, ages, educational backgrounds, and economic conditions, and 1 out of every 3 females in Minnesota will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. And whereas domestic violence involves physical, sexual, psychological, and economic abuse, intimidation, and isolation. And whereas domestic violence is a pattern of power and abuse used by a person to control and oppress another, and that all forms and systems of oppression must be eliminated. And whereas in 2021, at least 20 women in Minnesota were killed by a current or former intimate partner, and more than half were killed with firearms. And whereas at least 6 more Minnesotans who were friends, family, or bystanders lost their lives during a domestic violence incident. And whereas 28 minor children in Minnesota lost their mothers in this past year due to domestic violence. And whereas 12 of those children were present at the time of the murder or discovery of her body. And whereas the city of St. Paul, from being home of the very first domestic violence shelter in the nation, and groundbreaking culturally specific programming, being the birthplace of the National Blueprint for Safety, which focuses on victim safety, accountability, and providing opportunities for real change, to the creation of Bridges to Safety, a collaborative-run government and community-based victim service center, and a multidisciplinary justice system model to prevent the use of firearms in domestic crimes and curtail their use throughout our community, is recognized as a national leader in ensuring all victims and their children are safe and perpetrators of domestic violence are held accountable for their violence. Whereas we, as a community, from our first responders, community-based domestic violence programs, justice system workers, medical providers, educators, government systems, faith communities, businesses, and community leaders and members pay tribute to the lives and the courage of the victims, we whose lives we value and will continue to serve, and the life-changing impact we have found in working together to end domestic violence. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the St. Paul City Council declares October 2022 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Now I'd like to introduce Shelley Klein, who's the director of the St. Paul Domestic Abuse Prevention Program. And here is the resolution for you to take with you, and thanks to all of you who are here.
I just
Welcome.
want to take,
Oh, I was just going to say welcome.
thank you. I want to take a moment to thank Councilmember Prince and the entire City Council, who I stand here proudly with some of my coworkers, they're not all here today, and with my government and system partners from the City of St. Paul. And if it wasn't for the support of this body of leaders, none of us would be able to do the work we do today. Our agency alone in the past year has served over 6,400 victims of domestic violence and their children. We have had victims die in this past year in our city. We have children who have lost their mothers, their guardians, and our program and the services we provide reflects that many sister programs, Esperanza United, Asian Women United, Women in Nations, Women's Advocates, they're all core to the work we do. But we've done something different in St. Paul. We've lined up, we've joined together, we've put down our differences, and we embraced our vision of a violence-free community. And it's that has put this city on the map, not only nationally, but internationally, for valuing every member of their community and stopping at nothing to make sure that we can all be safe in our homes and our neighborhoods. And for that, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Klein, and to everyone for the work you do every day. I know we're honored and humbled for your presence and for everything that you do for our community. The statistics are horrifying, but it makes me proud to know about our history, being the first domestic violence shelter in the nation and the blueprint for safety, and many things that we take for granted now that we don't think about every day. So having this month every year to remember that and to honor you for your work and to think about the victims in our community and what we can do better is really powerful. So thank you so much. Any comments from my colleagues? There are 7 co-sponsors, so I think this resolution is going to pass, but anyone else wants to? All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Prince, for your leadership. And Ms. Prince moves approval. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted.
Thank you again.
Item 18, Resolution 22-1582 has been withdrawn. And item 19, ABZA 22-2, considering the appeal of Friends of Pigs Eye Lake Park, Tom Diamond, to a decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals denying a request to issue a stop work order on the Pigs Eye Lake Island building project, a project regulated and permitted by the Department of Natural Resources. The public hearing was closed and the item was laid over on October 5th.
Ms. Prince.
Yeah, I'm going to be laying this matter over for another 2 weeks. It's extremely complex. I have been reading the record, which goes back several years to decisions that have been made that we as a city had warned about. Our St. Paul Planning and Economic Development staff, when this project was proposed, had responded to the EAW that they were very concerned about it, and And one quote that stands out is that the plan was woefully inadequate in terms of the maintenance that was being proposed for the project. The other disturbing piece of this is that the issues before the Board of Zoning Appeals are relatively narrow. But if we do think about this going forward, this council stood together as we sought legislation that actually passed in the session, the 2022 session, that formed a state commission and provided about $1 million budget to begin a process of cleaning up Pig's Eye Lake. And in talking to an expert on this today who was among our city staff, he indicated that the project will make cleanup much more difficult. So there are a lot of issues here. It's a very tough one. And the Board of Zoning Appeals really struggled with it as well. So I need another 2 weeks to determine our next steps.
So Ms. Prince moves a 2-week layover to November 2nd. Is there any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The file is laid over to November 2nd. Item 20 is Resolution Public Hearing 22-299, approving the petition of the Church of the Sacred Heart to vacate the portion of public alley which runs through their property at 840 6th Street East. Public hearing was held on October 12th.
Ms. Prince.
Sorry about that. Oh, the alley vacation. Sorry about that, everybody. I got a little distracted. Yes, I reached out to the Dayton's Bluff Community Council, who was in touch with Sacred Heart, and took a tour of the project and where the alley will be vacated, and offers their support. So I am going to move approval of the alley vacation.
Okay, thank you. The motion is for approval, and the public hearing was closed. Correct. So, sir, the public hearing was closed, but thank you for being here. So Ms. Prince moves approval. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 21 is Resolution Public Hearing 22-302, approving the petition of Joseph Kolar to vacate the portion of public alley which abuts the property at 1911 Saunders Avenue. Public hearing held on October 12th.
Mr. Tolbert, I believe there's a version 2.
Yep, I would move version 2, and just want to thank Bruce Engelbrecht, Juan, and others for all their work on working with Joe Kohler and the homeowner on this and getting the proper thing, dotting the i's and crossing the t's. Appreciate it. So, move approval.
Motion is to approve. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted as amended. Item 22 is first reading of ordinance 22-43, amending Chapter 105 of the Administrative Code to add 2 youth commissioners to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
For those of you attending our meeting today, for our ordinances, we have 3 readings. A first reading where we normally receive a staff report, which gives us and the public more information about the item. A second reading the next week where we hold a public hearing on the item. So hopefully the staff report today informs you and others who might want to weigh in next week. And then finally a third reading where we we finally take a vote. Usually it's 3 readings. Sometimes we have extended time if it's a more complicated item. But today is first reading for this item, so we'll have a staff report, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Zhang to present. There's just a little password issue.
Otherwise, if you have the USB, I can do it on my laptop.
I have the USB. We already uploaded. So.
All good, or do you need?
Well, somebody just took over it. Good. All right.
Strange things happen in this chamber. with tech.
All right. Thank you very much, Vice President Naker and Council Member. My name is Mo Zhang. I am the Youth Leadership Program Manager with Right Track. And before we begin, I just want to share a little bit about the Youth on Board and why we are asking for the amending of the Chapter 105 Administration Code. Youth on Board St. Paul is an initiative and a partnership between the Mayor's Office, Right Track, the St. Paul Public Libraries, Sprockets, and Parks and Rec. How this program works is we recruit Youth on Board representatives through Right Track in the spring. We go out into the schools, into the park, the rec centers, community, and recruit young people interested who wants to make a difference, who is eager to learn about their city. And what they do then is they complete a 9-week summer academy, June through August, where we provide trainings, getting young people, getting them ready to be placed on boards and commission. They go and learn about Robert's Rule of Order, persuasion negotiation, learning how to refine budgets for the city. In addition to that, we focus on city careers. We know that the city of St. Paul has many careers, and we want our young people who lives in our city to work for our city. So we do career exploration. We've had staff from HR, OTC, the mayor's office, public works, all come out and share their experience, expertise with the youth on board representative. And at the end of the summer academy, we then recommend 2 youth on board representatives to be appointed to a board or commission. And then once they are appointed, we provide ongoing support, mentoring, and other logistical support from September through June, making sure that they feel supported, that they can ask any questions, and make sure they are successful while they serve on the board and commission. And then we repeat. Why youth on boards? Youth bring important perspectives, decisions, and energy to decision-making space. They also help diversify the policy, the group of people making the decisions. The skills that youth learn through Youth on Boards and Right Track will guide them through future careers in St. Paul and beyond. Most importantly, the youth that we've worked with and the youth that we talk to, they have a desire to make an impact in their community and in our city. This is an opportunity for youth to develop leadership skills, communication skills, and critical thinking skills, and also bring exposures to public service careers. So we are currently in our second year of our program. Year 1, we had 10 youth on board representatives appointed to 5 boards and commission. Those 5 commissions are the Business Review Council, the Capital Improvement Budget, the Financial Empowerment Community Council, the Human Rights Equal Economic Opportunity, and the Transportation Commission. In year 2, we had 6 youth on board representatives recommended to 4 boards and commission, the Financial Empowerment Community Council, the Human Rights Equal Economic Opportunity Commission, the Parks Commission, and the St. Paul Children's Collaborative. And this is a quote I want to share with everyone from one of our youth on board representatives this summer. I was a pretty quiet person, but being on Youth on Board has improved my socializing skills and has made me more confident in sharing my ideas and beliefs. And that's why we're here before you, asking to amend the Chapter 105 Administration Code for the Parks Commission to add 2 youth commissioner seats to the Parks Commission. This helps support the recruiting and longevity of Youth on Board St. Paul program, knowing that there are seats for young people to be part of where they have the same voting power as other commissioners. It also ensures that the diverse decisions makers on our boards and commission, and this will allow the program to outlast our current administration. So, thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Zhang, and it's a phenomenal program. I can't think why we would want youth representatives on our Parks and Recreation Commission. This is great to see, and I'm sure this program is going to outlast the current administration and many beyond that, because it's just a terrific idea. For those who are in the audience who are youth, who might be interested in serving, how can they find out more?
Yes, we do recruiting again in the spring. If you're interested, if we have young people in here that are interested, you're more than welcome to reach out to Right Track, reach out directly to myself or the program specialist. We will make our have that readily available via our Right Track website.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Mr. Zhang? Ms. Prince?
I don't have a question, just a comment. I want to thank you for that amazing presentation, and it really makes me proud of St. Paul, really putting youth where they can make a difference. And I always like to tell people when they call my office, young people, that I believe that they can make as much of a difference in our community as any adult. This clearly makes that the case. But St. Paul is a place where a single individual can have an impact, and a single youth can be that person. So thank you for your presentation. It was really terrific.
Ms. Yang?
Thank you. I don't have any questions, but I also just want to do a shout out to you, one, to the youth commissioners. Early this year, I got to do a video. We were here filming, getting youth to apply to be on the boards, and they're all so committed, so energetic about being involved and really doing it from a leadership role and being someone who's shaping the work of our city here. So to have them on the Parks Commission, I feel is going to be so crucial. They are the ones who are using our parks, and I know that they're going to have very valuable information and input in that work. So I'm very supportive of this.
Great. Any other comments? Otherwise, thank you so much. And we will lay this over until next week when we'll have a public hearing.
Item 23 is first reading of ordinance 22-44, amending section 220.05 of the Legislative Code to set rates for base level garbage service to be effective January 1st, 2023.
Welcome, Ms. Young.
Good afternoon.
Oh, would you just shift just in between the two mics? Thank you. This is good prep for when we get to public hearings. So.
All right. Acting President, council members. The contract that the city has with the St. Paul Haulers Consortium requires us annually to review the rates that the garbage haulers charge our individual customers. All 1 to 4 dwelling unit properties in the city are served by the St. Paul Haulers Consortium for garbage collection, garbage bulky item, yard waste if they desire it. This is both separate from our recycling contracts, collection contracts, and it is also separate from the special assessment for garbage that is on the property taxes. So this is the amount that the haulers charge individual customers on a quarterly basis. Every year we are required to work through a negotiation process. The negotiation parameters are very clearly set in the contract. For instance, the price components, we have a non-fuel inflationary cost. In other words, for all the things that our trucks, their personnel, things like that, that cannot exceed 3%, according to the contract. This year, that was very much to our benefit. In terms of the fuel cost, that is a 12-month escalator that we worked with, and there was a significant increase there. The disposal component of the rates is the amount that our citizens have disposed of in the past 12 months, but it also takes into account the tipping fee that the Ramsey Washington Recycling and Energy Board charges. That is going to be a very significant increase next year. It is currently $87 a ton, and the tipping fee next year will be $103 per ton. So that is a significant increase to the bill. We do have a provision in the contract that if diesel is consistently above $5 per gallon, the consortium and the city will negotiate in good faith to look at options for recovering that cost for the haulers. We have engaged in some of those discussions, but there is no change at the present time outside of the fuel component of the prices. In the past 2 years, we have worked very hard to make sure that when rates are increased, the smallest increases are for our small cart every other week customers, and larger cost increases by percentage and amount are on our 95-gallon large cart customers. Next year, the rates without taxes we are proposing is $15.12 per month for the small every other week cart, $17.99 per month for the small every week cart, $25.23 for the medium trash cart every week, and $28.17 for the large trash carts every week. That is the base amount. And then there is a 28% tax imposed by Ramsey County on those fees, and also additional 9.75% state tax imposed on those fees. And I would stand for any questions.
Thanks, Ms. Young. Any questions? Doesn't look like it. Appreciate the information. And Ms. Prent.
Actually, and this is unrelated to the report that you just gave, but I'm wondering about the request for proposals and the timing on that, because I think I've been getting questions lately, and I don't know if I'm up to speed.
There is a request for proposals that was on the street for the recycling collection contract. Public Works and Purchasing received a proposal and have rejected that proposal. We will be going out for another RFP for recyclables collection in the very near future. You all received the report of the Garbage Advisory Committee. I have that report for the Public Works report being reviewed internally to Public Works right now, and hope to present that to you in the very near future. And this contract ends September 30th of 2023. So these rates will only be in effect January through September of 23. And I hope to come before you and have an RFP for garbage services on the street November, December, January at the very latest.
Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that, Ms. Prince. I had the same question. And there's, Ms. Young, just to remind us all, we have no control over the tipping fee.
No, ma'am, we do not. Nor do we have control over the county tax rate.
Okay. Thank you. I do appreciate your department's effort that I know all of us have encouraged to try to make sure that we are encouraging less waste by having the smallest increases on the smallest carts in the every other week service. So thanks for the information, and we'll have a public hearing next week.
Thank you very much.
Item 24 is a public hearing of ordinance 22-42, granting the application of PHS Norfolk Avenue LLC to rezone the property at 1883 Norfolk Avenue from R3 one-family residential to RM2 medium-density multiple-family residential, and amending Chapter 60 of the Legislative Code pertaining to the zoning map.
So with this item, we are moving into our public hearing section. So those of you who are here to comment on items, we're starting to move into that portion. Ms. Moore, our city clerk, will read the item as she just did, and then I'll ask, as I'm about to, if there's anyone here to speak on this item. And when I say that, if you're here to speak on this item, please come and line up on either side. Both sides work. Come stand in front of the two microphones. You shouldn't have to adjust them. They should pick up your voice just fine. Right after you're done speaking, please sign in on one of the two sign-in sheets to left and right. And when you speak, start by telling us your name and where you live. And then you'll have 2 minutes to speak. 2 minutes go by very quickly. I'll raise my hand when you have 10 seconds left, and then I'll do my best to cut you off as politely as possible. But it is really important that all of our speakers have equal time, and that we be able to give just as much attention to the last speaker as the first speaker, as Council President Brenmoen would say if she were here. And please know that there are other ways to contact us as well. This is just one, but of course, call us, email us, come see us in our offices. This isn't the only way to be heard. So with that, just a quick intro to this item. This is about just the rezoning proposal. I know that there may be folks here to talk about the project in general. There may be other permits, variances that come in front of us in the future, but those are not in front of us today. This is just about this proposed rezoning. So if there's anyone here to speak to item 24, please come on up. And just as a reminder, this is a second reading of an ordinance. So we had a first reading last week where we received some information. Today is a public hearing. We're actually not going to vote on this until next week. So it's always a little bit anticlimactic that you come to speak and then we don't vote, but we'll be voting publicly next week, so you'll know how it turns out. So welcome.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kara Parker, and I'm in the 1800 block of Munster Avenue. Dear council members, I am here today to provide feedback on the proposed rezoning at 1883 Norfolk Avenue. I currently live less than 2 blocks from this proposed site and walk past this property twice a day. I've raised my kids in this neighborhood, and the location of my home purchase was 7 years ago, was very important to me for the convenience to work, school, shopping, nature, and the pursuit of my hobbies and passions. I've come to know many of my neighbors as friends. While I highlighted the positives, I have to say that this proposal and process has been nothing short of disappointing. Our neighborhood has rallied together to push back against this proposed rezoning and construction, and our voices continue to be dismissed. I have no faith in you to listen to us at this point. This has become a formality in the process, but I have no reason to believe that you will deny Presbyterian Homes' request for the zoning variances. We have had meetings, had one-to-one conversations with Presbyterian Homes, and a city council member out to our property, and nothing has changed for us. I ask you this question: why are we here? Why are there opportunities for neighbors and community members to provide input if we have been overruled every single time on the zoning variance and regarding this project? I feel you're not listening to our community members. You're listening to liars. We've been lied to by Presbyterian Homes regarding their outreach in the neighborhood. We've been lied to regarding the size of the project. We've been lied to about the true tenants of the building, and we've been lied to about the impact that this project will have on our neighborhood. As I stand here today, I'm also asking, are you taking the side of liars when you vote for the rezoning of this project, or are you looking out for the constituents like all of us here today? We recognize that you post banners, billboards, and campaign matters every election, and the consensus is that it's vote for me, I listen to my constituents. Today, your vote will really tell us how you feel.
Thank you so much. Welcome.
Hi, Elizabeth Sampier. I live at 1845 Graham Avenue, just a few houses down from the proposed, one side of the proposed site. I'm pretty much a lifelong St. Paul resident. Tom and I have lived in various building or homes mostly in 55116. I was raised in 55116, and we purchased his family home back in 2012. So we've been here for that long. He's been there. They owned the property since 1950, early 1950s. His family lived there. So we understand that Presbyterian Homes is going to build something there, and that they own the property, and so they do have the ability to build something. What we are opposed to is the size of the building in relationship to the homes in the neighborhood, which are mostly the little 1.5-story bungalows. The proposal is to build as close to the street on all 4 sides with minimal parking compared to the amount of residents that are going to be in the building. Disappointed and frankly disgusted when we attended the Planning Commission meeting, and several of the commissioners stated that they did not care about the size of the building or the lack of parking. The building might fit better in their neighborhood. It doesn't fit in our neighborhood, the size. This neighborhood is not on a bus line, it's not on a rail line, it has no direct access to shopping or any other proposed or other sites that Presbyterian Home owns. The Highland Village is a 4-mile round trip, and Aldi's is over a mile round trip. Presbyterian Homes, Sam, has told us that they can ride their bikes. Again, the closest park is blocks away, down a steep hill, and across 2 busy streets. There's no green space proposed. We've been told that families are going to live there. There's no decks, there's no patios, there's no grills, there's no place for the residents to smoke because they won't be allowed to smoke on the property. They are currently smoking on our properties. And that's why we're opposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to you both for keeping perfectly within 2 minutes, by the way. That was extremely well done, and it's hard to do. Is there anyone else here to testify on this item? And feel free to line up now if you are here on this item, because it's helpful to see how many folks we have. Anyone else on this item? Okay. Welcome.
Welcome. Council President, council members, thank you for your time. My name is Sam Jagodzinski. with PHS Norfolk Avenue LLC. So the applicant, address 2823 Hamlin Avenue North, right here in Roseville, so Ramsey County. And Presbyterian Homes, we've got 4 communities in St. Paul today, and then we've got a 5th one that's opening up soon. So we're very excited about that, and we really view ourselves as a core member of the community here. So that's sort of the backstory of this project. This rezoning has passed across the plate of many folks over the last, at this point, 5 months. The Highland District Council recommended approval, as did the City Zoning Committee and then the Plan Commission unanimously. So we echo that. We echo city staff's recommendations. And just to expand on that, just a very, very small amount. We are supportive of it, and the reason we're applying for it is we think it's in character with, it's consistent with the way the area is developed, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, and it's compatible with surrounding uses. So in terms of consistency with the way the area has developed, currently this block, this is the only parcel that's not zoned RM2. Every other parcel zoned RM2. So this would essentially complete the block. By area, over 90% of the block already has this zoning designation. So it would, in fact, sort of create, right now the zoning map's got a little bit of what you might call a sawtooth, and it would make it more geographically compact in terms of zoning districts. So we strongly think it's consistent with the way the area is developed. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan because right now it's in the comprehensive plan, the site is designated urban neighborhood, which has goals of providing for medium density housing that diversifies housing options and provides for multifamily housing along collector streets. This RM2 zoning of medium density multiple family, we think fits that to a T, also fits the Highland Park, the Highland Park District Plan, and compatible with surrounding uses. It's of a similar zoning, as mentioned before, as the remainder of the block. So with that, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you so much. Anyone else to testify on this item? Seeing none, Mr. Tolbert moves to close the public hearing.
Yeah, I just thanks folks for coming down, and for my colleagues. Obviously, our office has been following this very closely for, I think, a couple months now. There is a substantial amount of public letters and emails in the record. Just want to flag that for people of many other neighbors who weren't down here to testify. But thanks for the folks who came down here, and appreciate that. And I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and lay over for a third reading next week.
Motion is to close the public hearing, and the matter will lay over till final vote next week. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed, and the ordinance is laid over to October 26th for final adoption. Item 25 is a BZA 22-3, considering the appeal of Salamatu Borte to a decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals denying zoning variance requests to create off-street parking spaces in the front yard and to place the parking spaces 3 feet from the north and west property lines at 1712 Orange Avenue East.
And since this is an appeal to a decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals, I'm wondering if Ms. Scarda could just quickly frame for us what exactly we're talking about and not talking about here today, just in terms of what's germane.
So, Council Vice President Naker, council members, this is just what is before the council in this matter is just the appeal. It's the motion of intent to grant or deny is basically what the end result. Does that answer your question?
And we would be looking for finding some error in the Board of Zoning Appeals decision rather than relitigating the facts here. Okay, thank you. Okay. So why don't we start with David? The staff report from DSI. Welcome.
Hi,
and then we'll go to the public hearing. So if you want to be seated for just a moment while we have the staff report, and then we'll do the public hearing. Yes.
Thank you, Vice President Naker, council members. David Ide with the Department of Safety and Inspections. I'm the staff member assigned to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about this case. I have some slides up. Hopefully they can be brought up. 1712 Orange Avenue East. This is the third.
Did you put it on the projector thing?
Yep.
Can we get the projector through the magic of technology?
Oh, I have a piece of paper that I want to put up.
Yeah. Projector magic. Camera magic. What's it called? Overhead camera. Ah,
There we
that was the
go.
magic word. Thank you.
So this is probably the part Ms. Scarda wanted to speak about. 61702 is why this is here today. Applicants can bring cases to the Board of Zoning Appeals, request variances, or appeal something the zoning administrator says. And then if they disagree, if they think that there was an error in any fact, procedure, or finding made by the Board of Zoning Appeals, they can appeal that to the City Council. So that is why this is here today. This property is in the northeast corner of the city, just north of Maryland Avenue East and west of Wiper Avenue on Orange Avenue East. I have a closer map. It's on the north side between Kennard and Flandreau. And this is the property in question. The application for 2 zoning variances was received on August 5th, 2022. The variances were read, but the applicant was proposing to place parking spaces in the required front yard, which is typically not permitted. And then having parking spaces 3 feet from the property line, typically 4 feet is required. And then I have a satellite image of the property up. It's zoned R3, 1-family residential. This is the parking plan that the applicant had submitted. North is up. So at the September 6, 2022 Board of Zoning Appeals hearing, the staff recommended denial of the requested variances based upon finding 1 for just the parking, because it's like there were 2 requests, so we have to speak to all of them in the staff report. And then 2, 3, and 4, the board had moved and passed denial based upon 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 4 members voted in favor of the denial and 0 against. The applicant submitted an appeal application September 16, 2022. As you know, 1599 requires that we respond within 60 days. Staff have already sent a letter extending that, so we're at 120 days, which would be December 2nd. So I don't know how much you want me to expand on the actual findings, but finding 1 regarding the variance being in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the zoning code. It was not clear why the applicant could not provide that because they had the room. Number 2, regarding the comp plan, LU 14 encourages reducing the amount of land devoted to parking, so that finding was not met. Finding 3, regarding practical difficulties, the applicant cited vandalism and lack of access to the accessory structure in the rear yard, but it wasn't clear that they ever had access to the accessory structure. And they do have a 2-car attached garage with 2 driveway spaces that they could use. Staff inspected the property and noted available street parking and several vehicles on site, so that finding was not met. Finding 4, regarding the plighted landowner being due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the landowner. The 2-car garage and associated driveway seemed to be reasonable. It seems like the landowner was creating this themselves. So I visited the site at about 6:20 on August 23rd. One of these cars is mine, so it's even less than this. There was street parking available. If you go to Street View, it does not look like this. There's a taller fence there currently, so I took a photo of that and brought it to you. You can see the parking. I think how this came before you was there was a complaint about vehicles parking on an unimproved surface, and then it came up, why is there gravel covering the yard? And the applicant is proposing to actually pave it. That's why the applicant requested these variances, to actually pave this area. It's gravel currently. And I think these are just some other documents, but that's pretty much it. So it's up to you to decide if the board made an error. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much. Super helpful. Any questions from my colleagues? Oh, Ms. Prince.
Yeah, in that last photo, it's a driveway that goes up to the garage, right? So that is permitted?
Councilmember Prince, correct. So the garage door is 16 feet wide. They could have a 20-foot driveway by right. out to the street 20 feet, up to 30 feet from the garage door.
Okay.
So
So the issue is the cars that are parked to the right there?
correct, yep, it's just this area on the right. They could legally have the area 20 feet wide paved to the street.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much. And with that, we'll open up the public hearing. For these types of hearings, we do have 15 minutes per side. So we'll hear for those, for the appellant first. So, ma'am, would you like to come up and speak now? Welcome. Just again, stand in between the two mics and just start by telling us your name and where you live. And then you have 15 minutes.
My name is Salima Tuforte. I live in 1712 Orange Avenue. And my original parking driveway is only 2-car park over there. It's too short, too small. And my garage, he's talking about, I have things in there. I can't able to park cars there, like a storage. I put my other stuff in there. And also the street. And if I park my car on the street winter time, and emergency, they come and go to my car. And I want to do my driveway with the asphalt, and because I get a lot of mud in the driveway and how they call garbage, the stone, too much stuff in there. So I want to make my driveway like put tile in there, everything. So I appeal this for you guys to consider my appeal, so I can able to get my zone to able to fix my driveway, and I can able to park my car, because sometimes my neighbors, where they have ghetto, where they have occasion like a party, they park all this on the street. So when I come forward, I don't have no parking. I don't have no room to park my car. And I have other family and kids have cars, so I want to able to, when they come, get enough room for to park our cars without towing my cars when I park on the street. When I get an emergency, snow emergency, or my neighbor would have a party, so I can able to park my car in my driveway. So I'm asking you guys kindly to consider my appeal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Please make sure to sign in if you haven't signed in already. Thank you. Is there anyone else here on the side of the appellant? Is there anyone here to speak against the appeal? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Yang moves to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Yang.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming to testify today. I really appreciate our staff member being here to present also. I got a chance to look through the documents, and I know that there was a lot that was put into the process for us to get here. So I want to really say thanks for that. I do find it very hard to find that the BCA made an error, though. So it's hard for me to support the appeal here. I'm hearing a lot about, like, personal preference, or hearing about the desire to want more parking spots. I know we hear that from a lot of homeowners, but when I really do look at the content from the BCA here, I don't find an error, so I will not be able to support the appeal, and I will be motioning to deny the appeal.
So the motion of intent is that the appeal is denied. Is there any discussion of that motion? All right. In that case, all those in favor of the motion, which is of intent that the appeal be denied, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The motion of intent, the appeal is denied. Item 26 is resolution public hearing 22-283, amending the financing and spending plans in the fire department for the amount of $389,001 for the Fire Station 51 upgrade project.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Come on up. You got 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Council Vice President Naker, council members. My name is Roy Macoso, Deputy Chief, St. Paul Fire Department. This project is in partnership with PED, and this is an attempt to spend down some funds that they have with a spending deadline of March of 2023. The funds are, the intent is to reprogram available administrative CDBG funds and some unanticipated program income to fund Station 51's improvements. Station 51, 296 7th Street West. It was a fire station until 2010. At that time, we had 16 stations. We now have 15. In 2010, we were doing about 35,000 runs a year. Now, this year, we're estimated to be over 60,000. So the plan would be to return Station 51 into an operational fire station, housing fire, EMS, and then most likely our CARES unit. The initial ask has gone through the CIB process, and currently the funds would be utilized for soft costs. We're working with the environmental review to work on the hard costs in regards to construction. So really the design piece, the engineering, and then consulting for HVAC. The building is over 10,000 square feet, so it needs to abide by sustainability ordinances. Open to questions if there are any.
Thank you so much. So this $389,001, very specific. It's nice to not just see the zeros, is for the soft costs. And then we can expect further capital costs coming later.
Yes, once the environmental review process is done.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify on this item? Seeing none, Mr. Ballinger moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion prevails.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 27 is Resolution Public Hearing 22-284, amending the financing and spending plans of the Department of Public Works capital budget to transfer $205,032 of municipal state aid funding from the 2021 Robert Street project to the 2021 Robert Street Viaduct project.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, Mr. Tolbert moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 28 is Resolution Public Hearing 22-295, amending the financing and spending plans of the Department of Public Works capital budget to add Minnesota Department of Transportation funding to the Concord and Highway 52 traffic signals project.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, Ms. Yang moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 29 is Resolution Public Hearing 22-304, amending the financing and spending plan in the Department of Parks and Recreation in the amount of $500,000 to reflect Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development funding for the construction of Phase 2 of the St. Paul Changsha China Friendship Garden.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, Ms. Jalali moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 30 is Resolution Public Hearing 22-308, accepting the funding from Dunlap and Associates in the amount of $75,000 for the development and implementation of pedestrian safety measures and amending the financing and spending plans in the Department of Public Works capital budget to add the funding to the 2022 pedestrian and traffic safety program.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 31 is Resolution Public Hearing 22-312, approving the application of Rock What You Got for a sound level variance in order to present amplified sound on October 29th at 425 Rice Street, the former Sears parking lot.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? This is also the way to find out all the cool things that are happening in the city over the next few weeks, so pay attention over the next few agenda items. Seeing none, Mr. Ballinger moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 32 is Resolution Public Hearing 22-316, approving the application of Anderson Race Management for a sound level variance in order to present amplified sound on November 5th at Harriet Island, 200 Dr. Justice O.H. Boulevard.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will move to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Sorry. Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Legislative hearing consent agenda items 33 through 41 are before you for your consideration.
Welcome, Ms. Moorman.
Vice President Naker, council members, I'm going to ask that 3 items be pulled from consent to be read into the record. The first one is number 35, the second 36, and then number 40.
Item 35 is RLH RR 22-52, denying a stay of enforcement for demolition for property at 587 Cook Avenue East.
Ms. Moorman.
As of 2:45 today, the last condition was met in order to get a layover recommendation from me. I'm asking for the matter to be sent back to legislative hearing on November 22nd.
Nothing like a deadline. All right. Any questions for Ms. Moorman? All right. Seeing none. Ms. Yang?
No, I'll move the motion.
Ms. Yang moves the recommendation of the legislative hearing officer. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The item is referred to the legislative hearing November 22nd. Item 36 is RLH RSA 22-3, appeal of Jack Can, Housing Justice Center, representing Hannah Gray, to a rent stabilization determination at 787 Hampton Avenue, number 213.
Ms. Moorman.
Vice President Naker, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Scarda to get us started today on the rent stabilization appeals. These are the first 2 tenant appeals that you're hearing, and just to establish the background on it.
Ms. Scarda.
Thank you, Vice President Naker, council members. Thanks. This agenda item is an appeal before council acting in your quasi-judicial capacity. The public record in this matter indicates that 2 legislative hearings were held where the parties and the public were given an opportunity to present evidence and be heard. The record before the council includes findings and recommendations made by the legislative hearing officer. The notice to the parties for today's council meeting stated, if you are contesting the recommendation, you may appear in person or send written testimony to be added to the record. This city council meeting is an opportunity to state why you disagree with the recommendation. Section 1801 of the Legislative Code authorizes the council to approve, modify, reverse, or revoke the hearing officer's recommendations. The council may opt to lay it over for a future date, but the agenda item that's been noticed for this meeting is very limited in scope, and the council should be focusing on that matter. So it's the actual matter that has been noticed. That's the limited issue that you're voting on. So hopefully that helps kind of set the table.
Thanks, Ms. Scarda. Ms. Moorman.
Vice President Naker, as indicated, this report is on the first of 2 appeals in front of you today that are tenants appealing rent increases. This is for property at 787 Hampton Avenue North, unit number 213, the appellant being Hannah Gray, represented by Mr. Jack Can, who is here today. The Dominium, who is the owner of Union Flats, requested through the city's process to do a rent increase. It was an 8% increase, and what I'd like to do is take a few minutes to walk through the findings and recommendation, because this is early days in considering these matters, just to probably overkill, but just so that you have all the information in front of you. The lease that we're talking about is for the time period of July 1st of 2022 through June 30th of 2023. Ms. Gray's current rent is $1,114. An 8% increase is about $89 a month and would bring her new monthly rent to $1,203 a month. As Ms. Garda indicated, this was considered in legislative hearing. I will go so far as to say exhaustively covered in legislative hearing. Each of the two cases you're hearing were heard on 2 occasions, at least 1 hour per case. In addition to that consideration, there was a staff analysis that took place in meetings with the property owner to review numbers and review numbers again. So you have no doubt noticed that there are extensive attachments to the record documenting all of those findings and commentary from both the appellant and the property owner on those findings, and those are in your record and are the basis for the findings I'm about to indicate that I come to. The reasons listed in Dominium's application, and remember when we talked about this before, there are several reasons articulated in the rent control ordinance that would be justification for a rent increase, and they listed 3. They listed that there were unavoidable increases in operating expenses, a decrease in rental income, and a pattern of recent rent increases or decreases. So that's what they itemized in it. This appeal was filed using the self-certification process, and as you no doubt recall from having worked on the ordinance so recently, if a rent increase is being requested between a rent increase that is an exception to the 3% cap in Chapter 193A, you can get that by means of self-certification. You're supposed to complete all of the paperwork and keep it, but that is the means by which the 8% was granted by the city. It was an automatically generated approval of that request. When we got the appeal, I immediately notified both Dominium, the applicant for the rent exception to the rent cap, as well as staff, and asked that staff audit the application. Another way to describe that would be a staff review of the application to get those numbers, walk through them, and come to either an affirmation or, changing the numbers, doing what they need to do to analyze it. DSI would describe the process of reviewing the maintenance and net operating income worksheet this way. They would say that first, the intake form asks applicants to adjust income for CPI. They look at allowable rent increases and allowable increases per unit per month. The premise of this MNOI is that the owner is entitled to the same rate of return on investment in the current year as they received in the base year. Now, the worksheets that DSI uses assume that the base year is 2019. So really way in front of when the ordinance went into effect. In the case of this particular building being new construction, they asked and were given the opportunity to use 2020 as the base year, that making more sense. So using those rules and going through the information provided, DSI came to the conclusion that the CPI increased during that time period 4.84%, and that the building had experienced a 4.52 increase in operating expenses, thus making an allowable increase of 9.36%. The ask was for an 8% increase. The math we just talked about justifies an 8% increase. Dominium, in the course of filling out their paperwork, did do an alternative means of analysis, I'll call it, and that
I won't go into depth here about that we can cover how they're thinking about it in another case, because honestly, whether we're using their numbers and their analysis or we're using the DSI analysis, their ask of 8% is met. They met the requirement in order to get that. And my recommendation in this case then is to deny the appeal and allow the 8% rent increase to go forward.
Thank you, Ms. Mormon. Are there any questions for Ms. Mormon before we open up the hearing? I have one question, which is how much time did we decide that we want to allot for each speaker in this hearing?
My understanding is for these initial hearings that we would go with the same amount that we allow for significant cases, such as an order to remove a repair or a vacate order, giving them 5 minutes per. So a lengthier period of time than for some other kinds of cases.
So 5 minutes per testifier?
Typically, it would be 5 minutes per perspective.
Okay.
You can, of course, adjust that sitting as the vice president convening the meeting.
It's a first. Well, why don't we do this? Can we have everyone who wishes to testify on this item 30? Thank you, Ms. Mormon. Item 36, just stand and line up so we can see how many folks want to testify. Okay, just one. All right. So.
This is Union Flats.
This is Union Flats.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So come on up and you can have the full 5 minutes. And again, just to reiterate, we are here specifically to talk about this one particular unit and this one particular appeal, and we're really limited in what we can discuss. So welcome.
Jack Can, Housing Justice Center. I represent Atana Gray. I really don't have anything to say about this appeal other than that the staff analysis, after making some corrections that we suggested, still came up with entitlement to a rent increase on this property. When we get to the Cambric, I'll bring up some things that probably have some general applicability to this project also, but given that the 8% is apparently justified by the staff, I'll leave that for the next one.
Thanks, Mr. Ken. And please sign in. You'll only have to sign in once. Anyone else to testify in this item? Okay. Seeing none, Ms. Jalali moves to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Jalali?
Thank you. I have prepared some points I'd like to make, and I would appreciate people's patience in my processing time is a little slow today. I've eaten half a sandwich in many hours, and that's it. And my brain is running a little slow. So thank you in advance for your grace for me. I guess I would like to start by just acknowledging, so we're hearing the staff recommendation in this case is to deny the tenant's appeal, and that's based on facts that came out in the findings and the multiple hearings and review. Thank you, Ms. Mormon, for summarizing that. We are new as a city at hearing these kinds of appeals. This is one of our first cases under the rent stabilization policy as passed by the voters in 2021. And that is actually the version of the policy that we are judging all these by, in addition to the rules DSI has published. So I know that's been iterated. I want to reiterate that because it is important to explaining, here's how I have to make my decision and we do as council members. Ms. Mormon explained that the property owner has to establish their case for a reasonable return on investment, and the explanation that we just heard states that under the city's best analysis, they would be justified in getting up to a 9% rent increase. They would get an exception from what the 3% policy would say, up to 9%. And in a property like this one, I want to note that the HUD schedule allows for up to 12%. A 12% increase at this property would be $1,247 for the tenant. That's a 133 increase. And I just care about us knowing that number as policymakers because I certainly wouldn't be thrilled if someone threw an extra $133 on my mortgage
I don't think that we should expect our renters who live in low-income, affordable, subsidized housing to just have an extra $133 a month. I am heartened that even with an 8% increase, which is what the city is going to enforce, and which is lower than even what the property owner has demonstrable information to entitle it to, that the policy is creating something different today. It is creating some brakes on the rent hike. I want to empathize with my constituent, with my tenant. I don't want the world to be such that you have an $89 increase on your rent. I think it's important that as we look at this issue systemically, we see how there's a policy reality in play that is curbing that even more than it could be, and I do think that's important to note. So from a legal standpoint today, the action the city has to take in this situation is to grant this, or deny this appeal with all the information that we are seeing. From a process standpoint, I want to raise up too that these increases were analyzed, they were audited, and ultimately we're seeing an increase that is lower than it would be in just a pure unregulated situation. I think the self-certification process is problematic at times in enabling a rate of reasonable return, but it has created important steps so that a property like Dominion should have to go through this before it raises rents on people. And I think we're seeing that in how this is playing out. And the big picture here, aside from this to me, is I think this explains and sort of illuminates why deeply affordable housing properties like this one shouldn't just be blanket exempted from rent stabilization. And that's a policy issue that we took up. I have a lot more thoughts I can share on that. I've shared them many a time in the previous ordinance process we just went through. But I think it's important that we see this not just as one little case, but in the bigger picture, the policy reality and the people that we're entrusted with supporting. I'm going to support the recommendation of the legislative hearing officer today. I think that it's important to connect it to the big picture. It's important that we can justify both the decision that we make right now and then also think about what it means for the bigger policy work we have to do as a council. I'm going to leave it at that for now. I welcome other thoughts from my colleagues. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Jalali. Any other thoughts? All right. Seeing none, the motion for Ms. Jalali is to approve the recommendation of the legislative hearing officer and deny the appeal. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 40 is RLH RSA 22-2, appeal of Jack Can, Housing Justice Center, representing Catherine Banbury, to a rent stabilization determination at 720 7th Street East, number 330.
Ms. Mormont.
Vice President Naker, council members, this item that we're talking about right now is, again, a request for an exception to the rent cap from 3% to 8%. And again, we followed the same process internally, notifying Dominion appeal had been filed, asking staff to audit the application, to get the M&OI worksheet from the applicant, go through an extensive review, and again, lengthy legislative hearings were held on 2 different occasions, and you do have a substantial record in front of you, as again, you can see by the significant number of attachments that you've had to go through preparing for today's meeting. This rent increase also covers the time period from July 1 of 2022 to June 30th of 2023. The rent increase that Dominion put in its notification was 7.1%, so less than the 8% exemption that they received through self-certification. This increase represents $96 a month, or from $1,344 current rent to a new rent of $1,440. The reasons listed in this application were the same as the reasons listed in the previous application for why there should be an exception to this rent cap, and that would be an increase in operating expenses, a decrease in rental income, and a pattern of rent increases or decreases. So those 3 items were ticked as well. I won't review their intake form again, outside to say they're looking at income adjusted by CPI allowable rent and allowable increase. That's kind of the whole point of the MNOI, and it's articulated in here. In this case, 2019 was used as the base year, as opposed to the previous case where 2020 was used as the base year. What needs to be talked about more deeply in this is that the current year analysis that Dominion prepared, instead of providing an increase looking at their own information, I would say the actual rent collected versus the rents in the area for non-Section 42 buildings is what they were looking at. So non-Section 42 is those, Section 42, low-income housing tax credit. So we've got affordable housing that's governed under the tax credit and the rules associated with all of that. And then instead of adjusting using the numbers from 2019, looking at what surrounding housing at market rate would be rather than a comparable, Section 42, or looking at the same numbers moving forward. This, in DSI's estimation, was an apples to oranges comparison. We're not looking at the same thing over time. It needs to be apples to apples. So I would say Dominion believed, when completing their application, that this was a legitimate way to approach it, given that it's affordable housing. In the full analysis of their information, it is not the staff finding, nor is it my finding, that is the way the numbers should be analyzed. Looking at the increase in costs and the increase in the CPI in the time period, which become the key variables, they were able to come to a determination that there could be a rent increase beyond that 3% cap in the ordinance. Their initial analysis indicated about a 5% increase. Upon further analysis and considering some of Mr. Can's comments, they came to a 6.12% increase being appropriate for the numbers. And the lion's share of that is, in fact, the vast majority of that is simply consumer price index changes over the time period that we're looking at. The concept, just going back to the apples to oranges question and how they were talking about it being appropriate to use a different model to analyze how much rent increase they should get. They, again, said, we're Section 42, we should be treated differently. This is how we think our numbers should look. I indicated DSI and I disagree on that, and I will go further and say that there is no provision in the ordinance that this is being considered under for any affordable housing whatsoever. It is not in there. And so I cannot see where an alternative means of analyzing the data is justified. The ordinance and the rules for implementing the ordinance would allow me and you to say an alternative means of analysis would be appropriate in given circumstances. I don't think in this circumstance it is. So at the end of the day, my recommendation is that Ms. Van Bury's appeal be granted in part. Unfortunately, the 6.1% does make sense. The numbers do come out there. It is a 1 percentage point difference in the amount of the rent increase. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on that.
Thanks, Ms. Mormond. Are there any questions? Ms. Prince?
Ms. Mormond, on the subject of doing a different analysis because it's a low-income housing tax credit property. Your analysis is that the ordinance as passed by the voters doesn't allow for a different analysis on something that was built as affordable housing.
Correct. There is no mention of affordable housing, and that would be one of the two pillars that I would look at. I would look at what does the ordinance say, and then what does common sense say when looking at this? Is there any reason that I can find from what's being presented to me that it would be reasonable and appropriate to make an exception to the way the department analyzes these? I do not find that that's the case in this situation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Ms. Mormont. And now we'll open up the public hearing on this item. So anyone who wants to speak on this item, can you line up just so we can see how many folks we have? All right, so why don't we take 10 minutes for this item? We'll give you each 5 minutes and we'll try this out and go from there. It's our first time. So Mr. Can, welcome back.
Thank you. So I think it's important to dispose of one of the arguments that the hearing officer just referred to, that Dominium raised, which is that somehow they should have been able to use, in comparing the base year to the current year, market rents for the base year. And of course, if they had done that, they would have been entitled to an absolutely enormous rent increase. It was like something like 17, 18%. The reason that makes absolutely no sense isn't just because of the way the ordinance is written. It's because only a few years ago, they received $15 million in public subsidies to assure that the reduced rents under the federal tax credit program were sufficient to provide them and their investors and their lenders with a reasonable return. So there is absolutely no reason that they should have been able to use market rate rents to justify an increase in those rents that were completely reasonable 2 or 3 years ago. I'd also point out that I included in the material attached to the agenda, which probably you all haven't read, although I did send a letter yesterday, that any kind of pleas of poverty from Dominium are just absurd. In 2019, they had to submit a detailed documentation to the Housing Authority and to the Housing Finance Agency for final approval of the tax credits on this project. And part of that involved 15-year cash flow projections. And at year 15 in those projections, their net operating income was going to be $784,000. Their MNOI worksheet that they submitted showed that last year their net operating income was $879,000. They are already hundreds of thousands of dollars over in terms of return on investment, what they projected for 12 or 13 years from now, only a few years ago. They are not hurting. They probably, if you actually took the reasonable return on investment seriously, wouldn't be entitled to any rent increase in this project or in Union Flats. The second thing I'd like to say is that the staff did a good job of analyzing the MNOI worksheet that they submitted. I'd echo the comment that the council member made a few minutes ago that every other building in the entire metropolitan area, other than those in St. Paul, the low-income, largely elderly residents received a 12% rent increase. In St. Paul, it was no more than 8% in any of their projects. And in the Cambridge, it should only have been half that. I'll leave it up to you to draw the implications for the amendments you've made in the ordinance. I think they're fairly obvious. The final point I'd like to make is that there was nothing special about that the MNO, that the calculation of permitted rents for Ms. Banbury's appeal applied to the entire building. They didn't isolate her unit in any way. They took the entire rent for the entire building, the entire expenses, compared it to the entire rent, entire expenses for the base year, used the consumer price index. So there is nothing unique about the fact that Ms. Banbury has been charged more than the ordinance permits. Everybody in the building has been charged more than the ordinance permits. That's a violation of the ordinance. It's a violation of the statute. It's literally a misdemeanor. Although I don't expect you to go there. But I do think it would be appropriate for the city council, even though you don't control DSI, to do something about it. Because right now they're getting away with more than they should be in this building, and I'm sure in the other 7 or 8 buildings that they own. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, my hand means there are 10 seconds left still. So in case you have 9 more seconds worth of anything to say.
I'm sorry, what?
The hand just means there are 10 seconds left, but everyone was stopping right when I put it up.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Can. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Catherine Banbury. I live in Ward 7. Leveraging the new power afforded to me and my fellow tenants by the rent stabilization ordinance, I was represented by Housing Justice Center to successfully appeal an unwarranted rent hike. I know you are aware that Dominium is a recipient of vast public subsidies to provide affordable housing, as we spoke about. We also now know from what Jack said, from the data on their own worksheet calculations, that they make a healthy profit. I want to point out Dominium's track record of raising rents to the highest AMI level permissible every single year, including during the statewide economic downturn crisis and the global pandemic, where many of us lost our employment. In that year, in 2020, for instance, my rent raised by $117 a month. Under the guise of affordability, we saw clearly through my appeal that Dominium is using this money to pad its bottom line. I was pleased that Ms. Moorman refuted Dominion's argument that the MNOI base year of LIHTC buildings should be adjusted to that of comparable market rate rents. As a result of the rent stabilization ordinance, the rent increase for the Cambric is only half of what Dominium imposed on the rest of the metro area, a 12.5% increase. So 2 critical points here. Having utilized the rent stabilization's appeal process, I am heartened that renters like me now have a legal recourse, and I am all the more determined to make the process stronger and more accessible for all tenants. 2, given the reality of how Dominion operates, everyone in the public realm who create and approve these huge development subsidies needs to question why affordable housing providers like Dominium are excluded from the ordinance's protection. In closing, I encourage the City Council to approve Marsha Moorman's recommendation, showing that Dominium's rent increase was an error, and more importantly, I urge the DSI, after any necessary investigation, to enforce Moorman's finding on behalf of all of my neighbors in the Cambric building. Thank you.
Thank you. I think those were all of our testifiers on this item, but just asking one more time in case. All right. Thank you so much. Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Prince.
I thank you, Ms. Banbury and Mr. Can, for your testimony, and I feel really fortunate that our first two tenant appeals came in and identified a number of issues are extremely important to us as we move forward on this. Ms. Banbury, I appreciate your hard work on this issue. You are a member of the stakeholder group, and your continued advocacy of making the ordinance work better. And to the issue of having DSI look into extending the same rent increase to other members of other residents of the building, we will certainly take that under advisement. Under the appeal laws that we operate on, when a property tenant such as you would bring something forward, it would be for your unit and not for the rest of the building. But I think you've raised a good issue, and it's something that we will take under advisement and bring up with our council. That said, one of the changes that we did make to the ordinance that will hopefully result in a better outcome for an entire building is that we did amend the ordinance to include a notice requirement, so that when rent increase is when a landlord seeks to go above the 3% rent, that they have to notify all of the tenants that they are doing that, and they are allowed to appeal. So that is an improvement that we've made to the ordinance that should help going forward. You also raise really good issues about how Dominium has benefited from a tremendous amount of public subsidy. I won't go into detail, but this is something that I have stood with the renters in that property to say that the rent increases are excessive. What is troubling about that, of course, is that that is the HUD schedule that applies to all low-income housing tax credit buildings. So it's something from a public policy that should be being looked at, period. Dominium has always taken advantage of the HUD schedule and has raised it to the maximum amount. So I share your concern about that, and will join with you in looking into that issue further. So with that said, I am going to move as you have requested, Ms. Banbury. I believe that our staff has done a really remarkable job of hearing these initial appeals, working with council and with tenants and with landlords to get us off on the right foot as we continue to learn how the ordinance is going to work and how it impacts the people that it was meant to benefit. So with that, I move approval of the hearing officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Ms. Prince. Is there any other discussion? Ms. Jalali.
I just would like to thank Catherine. You've brought such persistent advocacy to this fight, and it's clear that you have a deep care for your neighbors, and I really appreciate you being willing to step up and help us make our systems better. So thank you.
And I would like to echo my colleagues' thanks, both to the appellants, to the Housing Justice Center, and to our staff. This was a first for all of us, and going through this process has been time-consuming, has been laborious, and has not been easy. And we want to thank everyone, and I do think, as Ms. Prince said, that we're learning from this process, both for policy implications and for process implications. So thank you for being part of this with us. So with that, the motion on the table is to approve the legislative hearing officer's recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted.
Anything further, Ms. Mormond?
I'm not aware of anyone else here to testify on a legislative hearing item.
So with that, we'll hold a public hearing on items 33 through 41. Is there anyone here to speak to any of those items? Seeing none, Mr. Tolbert moves the balance of the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the consent agenda is adopted as amended.
That brings us to the end of our agenda, and anybody under 18 who's still with us, come on up. It's your time to shine. Under. Oh, or over. Sorry, you three. Come on up. You look so young.
I figured you were targeting those three.
Sorry. Probably shouldn't be so specific. Welcome. We love having you here. We love seeing young people. We don't see them often enough. So please tell us your name and tell us where you live and what school you go to and what your favorite either thing to do in St. Paul is or part about St. Paul is. And don't say the city council chambers because everybody always says that.
Okay. My name is Priscilla Ochuru. I go to Cretin-Durham Hall. I'm a senior. I live in Woodbury. My favorite thing to do in St. Paul is probably some of my friends and I like to go to Grand Ole, the creamery, the ice cream shop, and it's very good. So, or sometimes we like to look at the lights at night, so it's fun. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I'm Adamari Vargas Jimenez. I live in St. Paul. I also go to CDH and I'm a senior. I think my favorite thing in St. Paul is probably like visiting just like the different parks that we have around here because they all are pretty nice.
Agreed. Thank you.
My name's Maddie Tidgewell. I'm a senior at Cretin-Durham Hall. I think my favorite thing to do in St. Paul is go to Casetas with my friends and drive around the city.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here. You stuck it out to the end, and we want more CDHers here. You guys have been really frequent visitors, so tell your friends.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a nice day.
You too. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there any good news from the wards? Ms. Prince?
Yes, it's actually October 29th, but the Harding High School is hosting a college fair, and in partnership with Progressive Baptist Church. It's really quite an amazing event. It will be on Saturday, October 29th from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And I talked to Joanne Clark, who's the Minister of Education for Progressive Baptist today, and she said, we have 68 post-high school education and training programs that will be having a table at the college fair. It's really a phenomenal event that is held every year on the east side between those partners. So I welcome all of our, I should have told the Cretin seniors, although they probably are all.
I think they're watching right now on
Okay,
their phones.
well, very good. So that is the 29th, and then also on the 29th, Sunray Shopping Center is hosting its annual Spooktacular. And again, we've got several vendors that are going to be there, as well as lots of our local nonprofits, the district councils, the city fire department, police will be there, the community ambassadors, and that is from 1 to 4 p.m., and it is a great trick-or-treat event for kids that's all localized in one shopping center where they can really clean up on the candy collection. So put it on your calendars. It's a great annual event. And Sunray is such a terrific partner with our Southeast Community Organization, District 1 Community Council. So it's really grown each year and is well worth visiting.
Thanks, Ms. Prince. Any other good news? Seeing none, it's been a long day. Thanks so much to my colleagues and everyone for being here. We are adjourned.
Yeah.